if you're not creeped out by them, then you should go and make a psychopath test or something. I'm sorry. This is just too much for me. It's not your fault. So it's Halloween in 2 days, and this used to be fun, you know, back in the day when we were allowed to dress up and go on parties. Yeah, shitty, right? Not being able to dress as kinky nurses and sexy police. I have actually never seen someone dressed as a sexy police officer. I have seen someone dressed as a menstrual pad, but not a police officer. That's crazy. How unfair is it to need to stay at home to stop the virus spreading, right? Has anyone ever thought about how I feel about not getting to dress up as Bellatrix Lestrange this year? I cut off my hair, so that wouldn't be possible either way, but still. In this video, I could show you ways a science geek like me could dress up for Halloween, or make a makeup tutorial on how to put on mascara, because that's about all that I can actually do to myself with makeup. But instead, I thought this year no one's gonna care for such a video since everyone is gonna stay at home for the greater good, right? Stay at home, people, so we can maybe get to see our families on Christmas. Well, that's not gonna happen now, is it? To not make you feel uncomfortable with having to stay at home, I wanted to make a Halloween-themed video that will make you glad you were able to be safe and sound at home. Spooky holidays you want? Scientists can do spooky. All humans can do spooky, actually, and unfortunately scientists are humans. Here come 3 scientific experiments that were actually conducted. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel, and coming back if you think that more interesting stuff might be coming out of my mouth. Study number 1, the Milgram obedience study. This first study was conducted in 1961 as an attempt to understand the Nazis that claimed to just be following orders during the Second World War and not having a choice in the matter of who and how they killed or tortured. It was designed to show how when an authority figure orders people to do stuff, most individuals willingly obey orders with very little resistance, no matter how dangerous. The key is the shift of responsibility from the person to authority. To test that, Milgram and his team recruited participants who would be functioning as teachers in an experiment under the pretense of participating in a memory study. They were supposed to ask questions to a potential student who was in another room, and if they answered wrongly, they were supposed to give them an increasing electric shock to up to 550 volts. This voltage is lethal. Of course, the students were actually actors who were told to start reacting with grunts at 75 volts and show strong pain signs by screaming and then wanting to get out of the experiment as the voltage increased. I will let you listen to this clip here where you can hear the teacher asking a question, getting a wrong answer, giving a shock, and the student protesting, but the scientists ushering the teacher to go on.
This one will be 195 volts.
Oh,
The correct one.
let me out of here.
Slow.
Let me
Dance.
out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let me out of here. You have no right to keep me here. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me out.
Continue, please.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let
Go
me
on.
out. Let me out.
Responsible for it. Red. That is incorrect. This will be at 3:30.
Ow!
The correct phrase is rich
Let me out of here.
boy.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let me out, I tell you. Let me out of here. Let me out of here. You have no right to hold me
The
here.
next phrase is
Let me out.
fast.
Let me out. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me out. Let
Bird,
me out.
car, train, plane.
65% of the participants actually went up to give potentially lethal 550 volt strong electric shocks to their students, even though the student, as you heard, showed strong pain and pleaded to be let off. This experiment is horrible because it actually shows that people would do whatever an authority figure would tell them, although knowing that they are causing harm. It's also important to know that the participants were not forced to continue. They could have stopped whenever they wanted. They just got a simple please continue from the experiment if they showed any indication of wanting to stop. Now, unlike this study, during which no human was actually hurt, but which very clearly showed the true and disturbing nature of humans, in the next 2 we will discover that not harming participants has not always been a given in scientific research, and scientists are just as disturbed disturbing as any other person. Although I want to make clear that such a study would not be possible today thanks to a lot of ethical restrictions put on any scientific research. The monster study. In 1939, two researchers, Bendel, Johnson, and Mary Tudor from the University of Iowa, decided to study stuttering. That's not a problem, of course. It would be very nice and helpful to know a lot about how stuttering occurs and why and how to treat it, as in every study you can always find a good reason to do it. The problem here is how they did it, and they absolutely knew it was wrong, even by the standards of 1939. Tudor was Johnson's graduate student, and they tried to cover up the whole thing, never tried to publish it, which would be death to any scientist, and the only existing document about what was done is Tudor's thesis. You can find the name of it in the description box. The goal was to determine the causes of stuttering and show that it's a psychological impairment rather than genetic. So they got 22 orphans, and by orphans I mean kids that do not even have a real guardian that will decide for them if it will be good for them to participate in a study like this or not. No one would say no to it. And they got these kids and separated them into two groups. One of the two groups, labeled as the normal speakers, consistently got positive feedback about how good they were speaking and how fluent they were, and the other group, labeled the stutterers, even though they did not have any preceding stuttering problems, or at least not more than the other group, was getting negative speech therapy, which consisted of being belittled for any imperfection in their speech. While children from the first group all got better with whatever imperfections they might have had before and developed a fluent speech, children from the second group actually developed serious speech problems that they retained for the rest of their lives. As you understand, they showed exactly what they expected. The problem is that they knew how this major psychological abuse would change the children's lives forever, and they still did it. They realized how bad it had gotten and tried to undo the damage to the kids, but, well, that didn't work. You can't just undo psychological trauma like that. The Willowbrook experiments. If you Google Willowbrook experiments, or even just Willowbrook, you will find a ton of documentaries and material on what I'm gonna talk about now. Of course, in this short time I cannot fully cover the topic. Maybe I will do separate videos for each of the horrible experiments to explain further, so I will stick to the essentials for now. Willowbrook was a school, or rather an institution in Staten Island, New York, and it was an institution for mentally disabled children, and it was the biggest in the USA at the time. Before we even get to the horrible experiments that took place there, we must address that possibly the idea of supporting disabled children and their parents is the only positive aspect of this institution. It was completely overcrowded. Instead of the 4,000 kids capacity it was actually meant for, it held more than 6,000 people, and as the years progressed and the state took money and support away, it got worse. The kids were not even attended to appropriately anymore due to lack of staff, let alone being enrolled in any classes. You can find documentaries of just huge wards and rooms with tables and beds lined up and hundreds of disabled, naked, screaming children in there. Horrible pictures in themselves. So basically, this was turned into a mere depository for mentally disabled children. Now, to get to the experiment, you have to understand that where so many people are living together under such poor hygiene circumstances and basically no attendance, it is only natural that most of the children in there got hepatitis and other illnesses. Hepatitis is an inflammatory condition of the liver. There are several strains of it, hepatitis A, B, C, D, and E, for example, increasing in seriousness across the letters. So most of the kids that were placed in this school got hepatitis, mostly type A. This is already a sign of bad hygiene and horrible conditions in the school, but what they thought they'd do wasn't change the conditions somehow, but rather get two researchers, Saul Krugman from the University of New York and Robert McCollum from Yale, to investigate the disease. So what they did was highly unethical and is even considered to be the most unethical medical experiment ever conducted in the USA. Starting in 1956, 64 years ago, they chose a few of the already enrolled children and new children enrolling to live in a separate building to inject them with hepatitis and then see how that goes. This was done for over 14 years on over 700 children. For 14 years! This is ridiculous, and it's not like they did it in hiding or something. They published papers on it, and even though nobody knew exactly what was happening, everybody knew of the horrible conditions in the institution in general and about the experiments, and still they were continued for 14 years on humans that were disabled and underage. How? I mean, wow. So these were 3 horrible experiments that were actually done in the name of science. Yes, science is the shit, and we all benefit from it, but it has to follow certain ethical rules, and thankfully they are revisited and improved continuously. Such experiments would not be possible to be done today. Still, wow. Doing such things in the name of science. Please let me know if you had previously heard of these experiments, or do you know any other horrible experiments like that? Would you like me to give you more detailed information on each experiment of these or on others? I can make a segment of this channel to be on breaking down such experiments. There are unfortunately more than enough to do that. Let me know, and please consider subscribing to this channel if you are new here.